corner. Oh, I guess I wasn't included to the stage there. How about that? Well, this is the Coach's Corner. Thanks for jumping in. How's it going, Coach?
What's up, Bo?
Oh, man. It's a weird day.
I'm glad. Yeah, it was weird. I'm glad I made it on in time. I was getting nervous there. But
yep. A whole day of running. We do have a couple of interesting ones. One we didn't get to last time that, definitely I want the coach's perspective of this, because this has to be just a bizarre situation. I don't know how much you encountered the whole Instagram effect as your career progressed, right? Like early on, obviously it wasn't around. Towards the end of your career, I imagine it became an issue, so to speak. And so what I'm referring to here is this one with Dan Campbell. And unfortunately for him, he got to find out during a presser that one of his guys took a picture of a whiteboard with coverage calls written on it. Gotcha. And so this was his reaction, way calmer than you would expect Dan Campbell to have taken it.
Where you need to just remind a player to be smart about what they're posting on social media. Is there anything
Who's that?
I believe Gibbs posted a photo of Jefferson with a bunch of lingo on the whiteboard and the running back room behind him.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did not know that. Okay. Yeah, I need to check on that then. Did not know that. Yeah, I'd rather our stuff not be out there. Thanks.
And it was an entire whiteboard. Now this is just a 9x16, but it was the full width of the whiteboard. And as you can see, it had coverage calls on it. And it even went as far as what the call out names were. This was 3 days before a game, right? So that's going to be hard to bring in new lingo. And what would that be like from the coach's side?
Well, you obviously you don't want to have your information out there. You want to always educate your players and everyone in the building about operational security. You don't want to give away any information that's going to make it easier for the opponent. That said, there's a lot of intel that goes on behind the scenes and in the preparation for a game. So, the TV copies are pretty amazing. And, every staff has a guy or a couple guys that go through that TV copy. And you'll know who they are because they always have their headphones on, and, they're listening to what they can pick up. They're, and this is primarily defenses trying to gain an advantage on the offense, right? So they're listening for the quarterback cadence, any trigger words that he gives. And then the other big thing is hand signals, right? So, and look, there's gamesmanship that goes on with that too. There's dummy signals, but what they're trying to do is marry up those calls or those hand signals with a particular route combination or running play, or whether it's run pass. Now, look, you've got to be extremely sharp to be able to pick that stuff up. The other things you have to be able to somehow try to simulate it in practice, right? If you're going to legitimately have a shot to be able to take care of, or to use it to your advantage in the game. So again, as coaches, that's great if we can pick that up, if we can get that information and it's useful, but it's only as useful as what the players can absorb, right? So, if you're standing on the sideline and you see the signal and it's going to be a pass and it's a slant, but it's happening on the opposite side of the field, I mean, you can yell all you want. It's not, there's not much you're going to be able to do. You can't really communicate it through the, coach to player communication, because that cuts off at 25 seconds. Plus, these are things that are happening at the line of scrimmage in real time. So
Yeah, you'd need your mic to.
yeah, your Mike Linebacker's got, he's got, and you look at it now, realistically, if you're asking a player to do that, all right, how much information do you have? You're asking them to learn a different language every single week, right? Because everybody's going to have their own unique set of code words. So I think it's concerning. You definitely don't want that stuff out there, but the Lions seem to be functioning just as well, even knowing that it happens. To me, it's just it's a wake up call. It's a reminder to your team. I'm sure that made its way onto a team meeting agenda at all 32 teams, just as a reminder to your guys. So,
be smart.
yeah, just be smarter with it. No, be careful what you put out there.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the stuff that's more useful is, and maybe more egregious is when players divulge injury and playing status unknowingly.
Oh.
Like, what's your that probably, gets coaches more fired up than anything, because that's something you do tell them about, right? I mean, because if you know that a player is listed as questionable, but like there's no way that he's playing, if you have that information early, that can definitely affect how you game plan for an opponent, and that will affect, especially depending on who that individual is. You don't want your opponents to have that information until you turn in your inactives on game day, right? Exactly. So
that's something Seattle and the Niners do extraordinarily well, right?
Yeah.
Is everybody's questionable until like 5 seconds before kickoff,
right?
Even when they know they're out. It was about a month ago, I think, that when CMC was hurt the first time, that he hadn't been ruled out, and they were talking to Mason, his backup, that they're like, oh, when did you know? And he said he knew before they disclosed on the injury. And then all of a sudden there was some question. It's like, well, if you knew already, now is there going to be an issue? Like, do we have to fine the Niners because they didn't give us an accurate injury report, kind of thing. And
those things they're hard. They're hard. Look, when you on Tuesday, nobody's feeling good, right? I mean, they're still sore from Sunday. Wednesday, guys they're still hurting on Wednesday. Thursday they start to come around. It's like my answer to that be like, how do you know? You don't know how the player is going to react to treatment and how quickly he's going to heal throughout the course of the week. And so, yeah, I mean, and look, you have to fit him. It's either, he's full go, probable, questionable, doubtful, and then out. Yep. Right. So there's a lot of gray area between those classifications. You know what I mean?
Well, and where they ended up being able to get around it anyway is that is a West Coast team, right? And you have to disclose by 4 p.m. Eastern time. Well, that's still during practice,
right?
West Coast. So the fact that he was told, he's like, oh yeah, I was told, after practice. Well, that would have been after the deadline East Coast time anyway. So they wouldn't have had to disclose that. That's why nothing came of it. But, but yeah, had it happened like on a Wednesday and it's like, oh yeah, I knew. And then they didn't disclose it. Then, then there's some tampering stuff that the league would play around with. But.
And like, look, the media always has access, at least to like they kick them out once practice really starts, but they're out there to see the guys warm up and stuff. And anybody that follows any team will see, the daily report that, so-and-so was on the bike, the entire warm-up period, so they'll make sure they get those guys out there. So the worst thing is when you don't see them, right? Because now it's news. Because if they're not on the field, then there's only one other place they could be. They're in the training room, right?
Yep.
And so, most staffs are going to do everything they can within their schedule to at least have those guys out there visible so that they're not really disclosing anything. And then once practice actually starts, then they go to the training room.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Because then they're questionable,
Right.
which is that blanket statement of you have no idea.
And look, those, the trainers have the training staff, the medical staff has, they've got the final say on that stuff. You know what I mean? So I would be, I think, I'm not sure exactly who puts the designation on there. I think it probably ultimately falls on the head coach, but it comes with it comes with a recommendation from the medical staff.
No, that makes sense.
Because it affects you too. I mean, as you game plan, you're preparing, you have to, what are the odds that this guy's going to be ready to go on game day, and if so, how effective is he going to be? So those are the things that come up every single day that you're wrestling with when you're running a team.
For sure. And Rob, I am a little surprised, I guess, too, that they still allow phones in. And there's a chance that maybe that one doesn't have phones in there anymore.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's a good thing Gibbs is good, because that is a way to find your way off a team. And in fact, that brings us to our next clip of a guy that has found his way off another team and, because of special teams, in fact. And that is the one and only Kadarius Toney. He goes back-to-back plays, just with horrible situations, both on special teams, both on punt returns. One of them, he gets a personal foul taunting for a fair catch. Not even sure how that happens, and then fumbles the next one. So here's the video of that.
Now he's got more explaining to do on the sideline. That is recovered by the same guy through the football.
Was a flag thrown for taunting as Kadarius Toney had been jawing with Skoranek. And this little light pass into the back for a touchdown. But oh my goodness! Now he's got more explaining to do on the sideline. That is recovered by the same guy through the football at. Oh, Skoranek.
So, man. So those were the last two plays in a Browns uniform for Kadarius Toney. Obviously, everybody knows about his stint in KC, not being able to catch anything. And has he taken his last snap in the NFL?
Gosh, man, I hope for his sake, no. But, I think at this point, he's probably taking the last snap for this season. Hopefully he can get a shot somewhere, get on somebody's, be in camp next fall and earn a spot. But, it's like, look, the accountability factor is so high and it's so difficult to win in the National Football League. There's certain things that you just can't allow. And foolish penalties, we've already talked enough on this. Like, to me, that's, penalties is indicative of the talent and discipline of your team. Talented teams with talented players, avoid penalties, and disciplined teams are able to minimize self-inflicted mistakes. So, Browns are they're not really in contention for anything right now. I think they're just trying to right the ship and continue to raise the standard. And so I feel like, in this case, it's, this wasn't done to him. He did it to himself, right? I mean, he's got one job. The most important job back there as a punt returner is to make sure that the very next snap that your offense is taking possession of the ball, or you're trotting the field goal team out there to kick an extra point. You hope that's the number one goal, but at the very minimum,
Got to secure that catch.
You got to secure the catch and make sure that we can retain possession of the ball. And the other part of the returner's job is to protect field position, right? So, going and making the tough catch. Don't let the ball hit and roll. And, when you're responsible for a taunting penalty, unnecessary, I'm sure the guy's jawing at him. That's fine. I mean, it happens on every single play, right? You see it all 60 minutes. Guys are jawing back and forth. But you have to be able to contain your emotions. And
it's one thing if you were jawing back and they got you for taunting, right? Because you're going back and forth, and sometimes they just throw it on a guy. There is zero level of football where you can throw the ball at the opposing player.
Right.
From peewee on up.
Minimum with that. Anytime you throw the minimum, you're going to get a delay of game penalty, right? Because if the official, if you don't hand it to him, you just throw the ball. But if you're throwing it at an opponent, that's
15 yards all day,
every single time.
And at any lower level of football, you're probably not coming back in the game.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That coaches be like, sit down over there, enjoy watching the game.
Well, and that's effectively what happened in this case too.
Well, sort of, because the next kick was actually the one he fumbled.
Right.
So that one was what? Rather than sit down, why don't you just grab your stuff, hit the bricks? Yeah. No, it's pretty crazy. And then there's the Cowboys. I have this one as well, and I gave it a comparison video just for sheer entertainment. And let's see, here we go.
The Cowboys will win. Wait a minute. Well, it was in the end zone. No one covered it, and Miami did. That could be a touchdown if Miami has covered it.
You can help it.
It's blocked. And picked up by Cincinnati out across the 46. It was blocked by Nick Vigil.
So I threw the one from 93 in there just because it was entertaining. But
sure. Well, I mean, situational awareness. You can't just talk about it, and you have to. As soon as that was blocked and it crossed the line of scrimmage, just so everybody understands, it's just like the ball hasn't been blocked. In fact, that will not go down in the stat sheet as a blocked punt. It'll go in there as a team punt for whatever yardage it was, and then a muff fumble recovered by, because once a blocked kick crosses the line of scrimmage, it's just like it hasn't been blocked. So, but most teams have a poison call. As soon as that happens, everybody should be yelling poison, 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 get away from it.
Look, you even saw their special teams coordinator doing that. Like, get away.
And I couldn't tell on the clip, and I'll go back and watch it, but whether that happened on the Cowboys sideline or on the Bengals sideline.
Oh, as far as their position, I think it was actually the Bengals sideline.
Yeah, so that plays to the Bengals' favor because, look, if that's on the Cowboys sideline, everybody on that sideline has to be an active participant. I used to tell guys, because the same thing can happen. It doesn't have to be a block kick. You have a bad punt and you got your corners locked up on the gunners, or maybe they're double teaming and they're working their butt off. They don't have an awareness of where the ball is. They need, we've seen that happen before many times, right? And now it's incumbent on the returner, other people on the sideline to, have your head in the game. You got to help the guys out that are on the field in that situation. To me, that one almost looked like, he just turned around, probably didn't even realize the ball had been blocked, and then the ball was right there, and so it was kind of his first instinctive.
It
I
looked
know.
reactionary.
Look, I know. John Fossil has covered that situation endlessly. You know, you're in the NFL. You're a professional. It's the same. You know, that rule is the same in high school and college. Nothing's different. I mean, that's been covered probably 100 times, but in the heat of the moment, you know, you have to know better, and you have to understand that, you know, you just made a very costly error for your football team. It's unfortunate, you know, to make a play like that. The other thing is, like, you know, they schemed it up, you know, block it clean, you know, make it. He came so free. I don't know how he didn't just, you know, completely take it off his foot, you know. But you know, if that ball's in the backfield, now there's no issues with that, right? So, but hey, that's what makes our game exciting, and you know, that's why coaches still have jobs, because we got to teach players what to do in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think because of the penalties that these guys get, it's so costly if you are half a second off, that pulling it directly off someone's foot seems like it happens less, just because you don't even want to bump that kicker.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're a half a second late, they get the ball back.
Right. And again, it's, you know, punt blocking is it's a skill, you know, it's something that it's learned and trained, but it's also an aptitude, because I think that some players just have a knack for it, and some guys will just never be able to do it. And so, you know, if that's going to be a part of your repertoire, you have to identify which guys have that, you know, which guys have the aptitude. And those are the guys that, and as you game plan, that you're trying to put in positions where, you know, you're trying to free those guys up. But they had made the decision to go for the block, right? When you make that decision, whether it's just a single pressure, two-man, however many people, whatever the combination is that you're bringing, once you make that decision, you've decided that, you know that there's a downside to this, but you also need to make a play in the football game. And that was schemed up very, very well. You know, they beat the protection. It came home. It still should have been a game-changing play. Could have won the game for them, but they had the turnover. And so,
no, I mean, if he fields that, or if he gets away from it like he should have,
right,
then, you know, Dallas gets the ball. They're already in field goal range. Like, the game would have been wildly different.
Yeah.
No, it was and I'm sure it was reactionary. I mean, it did hit in a funny spot, but at the end of the day, footballs aren't round, right? So you never.
Yep. I was just gonna say that ball bounces a lot of different weird ways.
Absolutely. So, you know, he goes to try and make a play on the ball. You know, even though it hit where it did, had he just been aware of the amount of Bengals that were surrounding him,
right?
You know, I would have been trying to get away from that thing. Even if you thought you had a play on it, it's just like, man, if you guess wrong, you don't have any of your guys around you.
Yeah, I mean, we used to tell guys, if they didn't know where the ball was at, and they're hearing Peter, if you're near the sideline, get out of bounds, right? Because
sure.
Because if I have any body part out of bounds and I touch the ball's out of bounds.
Yep.
Like I can literally have 1 foot out of bounds, reach in and touch the football, the ball is ruled out of bounds. And that, you know, so that was always a coaching point, was if you hear people yelling Peter, and, you know, if you're near the sideline, don't even try to locate the ball, just get out of bounds.
Yep. Yeah, we would do that on kickoffs. Mm-hmm. If there's a kick that started to go towards the sideline, it would be the, you know, kind of half step and kind of reach for it, because then it's coming out to the 40.
Yep, kicks out of bounds. Correct. Yeah, absolutely. when it comes, the sideline is different than the goal line. With the goal line, it's all about where the ball is crossing the plane. Yep. The sideline has, you know, that ball can be 3 feet out of bounds in the air, but as long as my feet are in bounds and I'm in bounds,
Exactly.
it can be the opposite. It can be a 3 feet inside the sideline, but if I have a body part out of bounds, then the ball's out of bounds.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely some gamemanship can happen along the sidelines.
Sure.
So one other funny video, and then then we can do our rankings. But this one is the Giants, and the fans sure look like they're over it. So they end up renting an airplane with a Skyrider, or they got the banner behind, and it says, "Listen, Lauren, please fix this dumpster fire."
Yeah, it's a sad state for one of the top franchises in sports, right? I mean, look, the Giants fans have reason to be upset. It's been a while since they've been a winner. And look, the Maras basically deserve better too. They pour a ton of resources into that business. They do everything. I can tell you, look, I never had the privilege of working with that organization, but I've never known anybody that had worked there that had one single negative thing to say about it. They're one of the few teams that are still in the coach's pension. They just do everything the right way. They've committed themselves to, the facilities, the training facilities, all that stuff. It's top notch, and they've got tradition. They've been around a long time, and the league's better when the Giants are competitive, and it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. Clearly, they have a void at the most critical position, quarterback. So that's, I think, has to be their priority in the offseason, addressing that. I may be in the minority, but I think Brian Dable is a really good football coach. I really do. Whether he makes it or not, it looks like the support's there. It looks like they're going to, kind of ride through that. And I think that I commend the Maras for that, because I think that one of the things that they understand that, patience it's important. Try to get the right people in place, and then, let them do their jobs. And sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes a while. And if you don't have the quarterback right, and clearly they didn't feel that was the what they had with Jones. So they've made that switch, and now they're just trying to piecemeal it together until they get their guy. And, they're going to be picking, high in the draft order. So, we'll see. I don't think this year's quarterback class is as deep as last year's, but we'll see where they go. I mean, they may be in the Sam Darnold sweepstakes. Who knows?
Well, that's kind of what I was going to ask is, do you think, like, if you were, say you're the GM there, there's only 2 quarterbacks really in this draft that are going to be high draft picks, right? Mm-hmm. You could make an argument that you could get a gem in Ewers day 2, but he's going to be a day 2 guy because he's been injured a lot. Right?
If I'm gonna just interject right here. If I'm Brian Dable, right, and I know, and I make it through this year, and I know my future job security is going to be hinging on next year, because I would be very nervous going into a season with a rookie quarterback.
Well,
and you just don't know what you're going to get. I'd be doing all the homework right now on Sam Darnold and trying to, I would be doing everything I could to try to get him, because it looks like he's going to be the top guy on the free agent market at that position.
Yeah. Well, and so that's actually how I was going to frame the question was, do you actually go after one of those two guys? Because I personally, I wouldn't. Both of the guys that are going to be high draft picks, I feel like would be better off if they sat a year anyway, right?
Mhm.
So since there's only those two, and there are some teams that are going to want to make a play for them, if I were playing GM, I would want to trade back and get some offensive linemen, because the one thing that team doesn't do well is protect their guy, right? Daniel Jones, although isn't an amazing quarterback, isn't what as bad as we've seen him either.
Right. Sure.
I mean, he's led the league in sacks, like that. He's running for his life all the time. So, obviously he's not there anymore. But to your point, it seems like you would make a play for a bridge guy, right? Like a Darnold or something to that effect, and then really address that offensive line, because they do have decent pieces, right? They were leading the league in sacks. So, I mean, the defense was getting home. They do have some weapons. They just don't have time to actually utilize them. So, I mean, not that it's a great roster by any means, but you can have an average roster and win games if the offensive line is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because like with, they're number one in the league right now in sacks per pass play, defensively. So they can get to the quarterback, that's now, offensively, sacks per pass play, they're 23rd, right? So you're exactly right. They're getting sacks on defense, but they're giving up a lot of them on offense as well.
Yeah. Well, and then when you look further, I don't know what your metric has, but when you start looking in at hurried quarterback, all of a sudden they're again, top 5 generally. And so even when they aren't getting him on the ground, it's still affecting his ability, right? So it's and it doesn't matter what quarterback's back there. You could have the most elite guy ever. It's one of the things I always laugh about when for whatever reason, there's a lot of Geno haters within the Seahawk fan base, right? And whether you think he's the guy or not doesn't matter. We've had one of the lowest graded offensive lines for most of the year. Now it's gotten better over the last few weeks, but if you look at 5 weeks ago, they were dead last. So they're like, oh yeah, well, Mahomes could do something. It's like, well, no, he couldn't. If you remember, he lost 2 offensive tackles. They lost a Super Bowl because he had no protection. So protection matters. I don't know why people kind of miss that, but they immediately go to hating on, Geno or Daniel Jones. And it's just like, you realize if he's one of the most hurried quarterbacks, which is a stat I actually really like, because, sacks are a great number, but hurried lets you know how many times they didn't get there. Right. And when you're looking at that, and it's like, well, 65% of his dropbacks are hurries. It's just like, well, yeah, of course he's not going to be great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, once he moves and has to, once they move, things start to break down. And, now, if every other pass play turns into a scramble drill, then you're not going to be too productive, certainly not where you want to be.
Well, and I think one of the pieces that people overlook with that, they're like, oh, well, he's great when he scrambles. You know what that does do though? First thing it does, unless you're Josh Allen, is cut the field in half, right? So half your routes already gone, right? Whichever side you rolled to, those are your only options, unless you're trying to throw to the other team, right? Because the biggest quarterback no
Never throw late and across the field.
Absolutely, right? Because those of us on defense have all day to get underneath that thing. So, I mean, outside of a crazy arm talent like a Josh Allen, John Elway could do that stuff where he could sling it across the field. Favre, right? The jersey behind you, he had a cannon enough to be able to do it. You still didn't want to see it because they still ended up in interceptions a lot. But when it didn't, you're like, wow, that was impressive. But
speaking of Favre, and I have to, there's at least once on the show where I have to go off topic and just.
Of course.
Did you see the the interaction with him and Mark Gastineau?
I did. I wish I had that video because that was tense. He was serious about about being mad at Favre for taking a dive on that sack.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and watched that play, and it's like, look, at the end of the game, I mean, he's booting out, and Strahan is like unblocked coming off the edge, and it's like, all right,
he could have thrown it away.
We probably could, maybe, maybe it's, but I just think it's like, God, man, that's super sour grapes. I think just like,
especially this many years later.
I know, it's like, come on, it just seems so ticky tacky, and it's like, just having, Brett Favre, I can just tell you this, man, like one of the biggest hearted guys you'll ever meet. I mean, the best teammate, he's just an awesome guy. I mean, and I could tell, just having been around him, just by the look on his face, there was like, it was just.
He looked genuinely excited to meet the guy.
Yeah, and then
it's like, oh hey, and then that's how it transpires. And he's like you could see I don't even know how to react to this.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of good that the PR guy was right there. Yeah. He's like, oh, we have something else for you.
Yeah, we got to get going. Yeah, it's like. I mean, look, I kind of feel bad for Gastineau because I think he's definitely, obviously he's going through some stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he was never a guy that was known to be the most sane guy. I mean, that was kind of his reputation, was being like just a madman. So, but I think it's just. Let it go. It's J.J. Watt's record now anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been beat anyway, right?
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, no, that was and if you're watching and you haven't seen it, definitely look it up because
we should revisit it next week.
Yeah, I'll definitely get a clip of it because it's actually uncomfortable to watch.
It is. It's very, very uncomfortable.
Like I can't imagine if you were standing there, right? I mean, because obviously the way the camera's angled, it's him and Favre, and then the PR guy. Obviously, the camera guy's there, but it makes you wonder what the reaction was because there was people in the room, right?
Sure.
So it makes you wonder what the reaction was around it, because that would be one of those. If you're standing there, you'd just be like, yeah, like I'm gonna go get a drink or something. Anywhere else, I'm trying.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but yeah, no, I'll make sure I got a clip of that for next week because it was, just a really uncomfortable encounter, and it went 0 to 100 like immediately. So it's not like there was pleasantries to start.
It jumped right into it. You hurt me. Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, like you could tell Brett was just like, "What's going on?"
Oh yeah. Well, and it was funny because the way he first said it, you could tell Favre thought he was joking.
Right.
He's like, I want my sack back. He's like, I think you'd hurt me because he's talking about like getting tackled today, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, and you're just like, oh no, like he's serious. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he should go say that to Strahan. Yes, not sure.
The thing that's funny.
See how that ends up.
Strahan would probably take it in stride. He's had enough time in front of cameras.
Sure.
That I think he would be able to just kind of brush that off. Where Favre, he's just like that country boy kind of. He's just like, I don't understand why you're mad at me.
Yeah. Wow. Army Navy week this week, man. Big week in football.
Yeah. Oh, in fact, I didn't get to see a bunch of the show. I caught the end of it. So how was Inside the Pigskin? You guys had the guest.
Yep.
And sadly, I missed most of it.
Yeah, you missed it was a good show. I mean, it was. This is a special week for me. I mean, that's I spent a good part of my early coaching days at Army, and I mean, I got a text message today from, I won't mention the guy's name, but he's a 2-star general, played Army football, and sent me a Beat Navy video. It's
Nice.
amazing how many of those young men I still hear from. I had one I was on a Zoom call yesterday with another guy that was played offensive line, and his son's going to be a rising senior in high school, and he just wanted to talk about recruiting and that kind of thing. It's a special place, and it's this is a huge game. It is. Army's had such an unbelievable season, but a record-breaking season. But it's all for nothing if they don't beat Navy.
Yeah. No, there's definitely that. And I know we've talked about it on other shows, but I know we haven't here. Since we're talking about Army Navy, what are the recruiting differences when you're talking normal college versus any of those schools? Because obviously it's significantly different.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it's changed a little bit. It's been a long time since I've been there, but the recruited football player is going to have to go through the same admission process in order to be accepted to a service academy, not just West Point, but also the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy. It's identical. And so I used to break it down. There's like the main components. You have to qualify academically, right? Which means, it's an Ivy League type of admission standard. Very, very, very hard there. You have to qualify medically. Every man and woman, young man and woman that applies to the service academies, before they're admitted, they have to go through an intense medical physical. They look at everything, and and I don't know how it is now, but like if you had asthma at some point in your life, you weren't going to, you were going to be disqualified. So they want to make sure that you're 100% physically fit. There's and this isn't a problem for the athletes, but there's a physical fitness test that you have to take and pass, right? And I forget what is all on it, but every cadet has to do that. And then there's you have to get a nomination from either a representative, one of your state senators. If you are the son or daughter of anybody who served in the military, then you're also eligible for what's called a presidential nomination. So the president has a certain number of nominations that he can give out. And then the superintendent at each academy, which is a general, active duty general, usually 2 or 3 star, though they have they're essentially the president of the university, but it's a rotating basis. It's that the superintendent has nominations as well, but you have to check every one of those boxes. The service academies also have prep schools. Again, it's a 1-year program. Admission process is exactly the same. But if you're deficient academically, or you need some, remedial work, but they think you're a strong enough candidate, they'll offer you an opportunity to go to West Point Prep or Naval Prep. And then after a year of, basically, it's a preview of the first semester that they're going to have. From there, they can, they'll go matriculate directly into, into the academy, and they'll start off as freshmen. The prep school, whereas we got a lot of players from the prep school. It was essentially like a redshirt year. The prep school had their own team. They played a full schedule. The only way you can get into the prep school is either admissions puts you in there. We have they have a team of admissions officers that are recruiters that go out and actively, they look for minority candidates. So they have a certain number of spots that they reserve for qualified minorities. And then, a certain number for recruited athletes, and then prior service. So, an individual enlists in the Army straight out of high school, but they show leadership promise. They test well. There's a chance that they could get tapped and say, hey, would you like an opportunity to go to West Point? And so, and if so, then they can go to. So some of those come from some of the prep school candidates come right out of this regular service. So it's very, very different. And that's why, fortunately, the NCAA doesn't really handicap the service academies with a lot of the, like a national letter of intent.
No, you couldn't even really do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, but the thing is, like, Bo, if you let's say you apply to West Point, but you haven't gotten admission yet, and Eastern Washington offers you a scholarship, and you sign your letter of intent with them, and then afterwards you get your official nomination and appointment to West Point. You can still go to West Point. You're not going to be, the academies are not bound by the national letter of intent.
That's cool. I mean, it makes sense because it sounds like a process.
Yeah, because a lot of the kids don't find out until, that they're officially in until like the springtime, you know what I mean? Or okay. well after February signing date.
For sure. And Chad, I don't know if you mean go away because there's going to be snow at the Army-Navy game, or if there's snow at your house. Because if it's at the Army-Navy game, man, I loved playing in snow.
It'll make it even bigger, more of a classic. This is going to be a good game, and it's a good game because both teams are coming in with very good records. Look, Army just beat Tulane last week to win the American Conference. Navy's got a really good team. And, that was one of the first questions that was asked last night was about the point spread. I'm like, I'm not paying attention to any. In this game, anything can happen. It really, really can.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is that divisional game where we're like,
yeah, it's a rivalry game.
Gearing up all season for.
Yep.
Right. This is that rivalry game. I mean, it's yeah.
Bo, I would just tell you, you got, as a football guy and anybody that's out there listening, if you have a football bucket list, Army-Navy game has to be on that bucket list. It is. I've had I've been blessed to have been a part of a lot of big games, 20 years in the NFL, playoff games, a lot of different rivalries. Nothing that I've experienced in my career can compare to that game. It just doesn't. It's just so different. And you go into the stadium, it is like divided. It's like there's nobody that's kind of straggling in between, straddling the front fence. It's like Army on this side, Navy on this side. From the moment they do the march on and the Corps cadets and the midshipmen are in the stadium, it is nonstop pandemonium the entire game. Those kids do not sit down. They're on their feet. And, 4,000 cadets and 4,000 midshipmen make enough noise to, that's like 80,000 people right there.
You know where they come together, though? They all hate Air Force.
Yeah, you're right. They do. They absolutely do. And that's the other part. It's like, yeah, it's a bitter rival that you can't even stomach to even the thought of losing to them.
Yep.
However, they're brothers and sisters in arms. I mean, they're committing themselves to a higher cause. The rivalry never dies, but it's more about bragging rights. It's not a hate rivalry. There's a lot of mutual respect there between the two institutions and the programs. And so And look, for a long time, when Kenny Niumatalolo was the head coach at Navy, I mean, he and Jeff Monken, they coached together.
Oh, okay.
They're very good friends. So they're special places. It's a special tradition in college football. And in this day and age of, it's college football has become so transactional with, portal and NIL and everything. It's probably one of the last places where you can say that it's the purity of college football is still alive and well.
No, that makes sense. The part of the show that I was able to catch, it was close to the end, but the coach housing. That was kind of neat. So for anybody watching, let them know a little bit about that because,
So at West Point, there's, one of the perks of the job is you get on-campus housing. And so there's a row of houses. It's called on Bartlett Loop. That's the name of the street. And I'll even go into a little bit more depth here, Bo, because we got a little bit of time. But we all thought that the reason they gave those houses to the coaches was that when they built them and they put the road around, or they must have moved the road. But like when you pull up to those houses, you're actually coming into the back of the house.
It's like an alleyway.
They're all duplexes, but they're facing like the common area, which is like a wooded area in the back. And the road goes around the back side of the houses where, you would enter the house through like the kitchen door, the back. So, but they've been in possession of the athletic department there for decades. And so one of the cool things is just understanding the history of who's coached at West Point and who lived in those houses. So I lived in 1010B, Bartlett Loop. That was, Andy Moeller, Gary Moeller's son, lived there before I did. But that was the house that Vince Lombardi lived in when he was coaching at West Point. And when Bill Parcells was at the Jets, one spring, a bunch of us went down there to watch an OTA. And as soon as he saw us walking up, he's like, Army's in the house. Which one of you guys lives in 1006A? And one of our coaches, John Luce, like I did, he goes, I lived in that house. I made $10,000 a year. I thought I was on the king of the world, So it's and they're not. It's just a cool place. And they look, here's the other part. And I don't know if they've changed this, but we used to get a letter from the athletic director that we could submit with our tax forms that stated that living on post was essential for us to, essential for us to be able to do our jobs and be able to be accessible and support the cadets. So not only was it a benefit, it didn't get taxed.
Oh, sure.
Once you had, now who knows what the tax codes now. I hope I don't get anybody in trouble or anything.
Oh, no, they found a way to tax it since then. If the government's good at anything, it's that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you're not paying rent. You don't pay electricity, water. I mean, the only bills you have are your phone bill and your cable bill. So
not a bad deal.
It helps stretch that salary a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Your mortgage is the toughest nut to crack each month.
Back then, we weren't making a whole lot of money, so it was a very welcome benefit.
I mean, even if you are making money, the housing prices have gone crazy.
Yeah.
Man, the hour always goes by quick. I do have one thing here, and that is if you're here in the Pacific Northwest, tomorrow night, if you want to meet your Washington Wolfpack, our local arena football team, there's a donation drive at the Buzz-In Steakhouse in Everett. I will be there 6 p.m. to 8:30. Again, that's tomorrow night. Come out, join in the raffle, help support, and meet your team. All right. Okay. Well, I mean, man, it goes quick. Let everybody
It
know where
did.
they can find you.
Well, you can find me here on Wednesdays with Bo. We also do a show on Tuesday nights on Inside the Pigskin with the South Florida Tribune, and I'm very, very intentional in my lack of social media. I'm not on any form of social media other than LinkedIn, but you can always find me on there if you really need me. But and again, that's by choice. So. Yeah, man. And Bo, great job with the videos today. That was carried the thing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. If you're watching on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. Other than that, we'll see y'all next week.
Thanks, Bo. You have a good one.